Ninja Eddie is the host of the podcast Living La Vida in Japan, which he's created to discuss his experiences, news, and family life in Japan. And look, he's just joined us now. Hello.
Hi, Tommy Gribbin. How are you today?
I'm doing alright, how are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Hanging in there.
Yeah, how's it going over there with the pandemic? Because you're in Japan, right?
Yes. Thankfully, where I live in, the numbers are low. It's actually, I think we're like third lowest in the whole country.
Wow, ours is starting to go terribly again. We've just entered another lockdown today.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
that's not good.
Yeah. That's not good at all.
But I'm sure we have more interesting things and positive things to talk about than COVID, which includes your new podcast, Living La Vida in Japan. What do you like to do in that podcast?
I just like to discuss what goes down here in Japan, news stories, and just my adventures because, as you know, here in Japan, it's a totally different world, in comparison, because I'm originally from the United States and it's a totally different experience. And I just like to share that with people, what is going on in my life. And, who knows, maybe someone might find something interesting and, oh, this is cool and things like that. So I just like to share that with people.
How different is it in Japan than the US?
Oh, my goodness. For one thing, there are no guns here.
Well, yeah.
And I'm not a fan of guns, so I love it here because of that. It's a lot safer and it's a lot quieter, to be honest with you. It's if you walk in my neighborhood, like literally at any time of the day, it's dead silent. Like there's no noise. You honestly don't hear your neighbors, which is kind of creepy, but it's also cool at the same time because it's just, I think I'm the loudest one in my whole block.
Wow. Now, what's kind of inspired you to start this podcast?
Well, to be honest with you, when I was in the States, before I came here, I was a journalist. And so I was always talking to people, interviewing people, mainly sports. That was my thing. And I also was a part-time actor. I used to do theater and movies and things like that. So when I moved to Japan, all that changed because of the language barrier. So I wanted to do something, with the arts. And I said, you know what? I love to talk on the mic. Let's try this podcast.
And do you think the skills that you've learned from theatre and film are sort of transferable to the podcast?
Yes, because, when there are certain themes you need to do, for example, like sometimes there's like something tragic happens, and obviously you need to, you have to have some live action in your voice when you talk, when you communicate. You can't say it all dry. You have to have some emotion. So it kind of translates in that sense.
Yeah. And on the podcast, do you take regular guests as a feature?
Sometimes I do. If I'm fortunate enough to get someone to come on the podcast, I do. I would like to do more in the future, but I would say it happens rarely, probably 5% of the time, maybe.
Do you have any sort of dream guests that you would really want to interview?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, well, wow, that's a really hard question because I have a lot of, I have a lot of people that I look up to, I admire, that I would love to have on the show. But I mean, the odds of me getting, let's go with like Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Yeah.
I would love to interview him, but the chances of me to interview Arnold, would be slim to none, but one could dream, I suppose.
Yes, give him £1 million and he'll come on the show.
I wish I had that kind of money, but yes.
Yeah. Who would you say your audience is? Do you have a particular demographic that you pitch the show to?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Actually, male audience is the predominant, and it's ranges from the 20 to 34-year-old range. That is my predominant audience. And shocking enough, when I did the show originally, I thought USA would be my number one audience. It's actually Japan of all sorts. Imagine that.
I know, a podcast about Japan being popular in Japan. I mean, crazy.
I initially I thought people from the US would be interested that wanted to know or wanted to move to Japan, but people here, I'm like, okay, that's cool. I mean, that's not what I expected, but
Yeah, exactly. Now, you have broken 9 Guinness World Records in video gaming, haven't you?
yes, I'm a big gamer, especially when I was a kid growing up. I used to play, video games all the time. I started out with Atari 2600 to Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and the list goes on and on. And one day, I just said, you know what? Let's try to get a record. And out of the blue, I got one record, and then after the other, and they just escalated to 9.
Wow. And the records you've broken, what are they?
They're for arcade games. When you put in one coin, when the US it's 25 cents. I don't know how much it is in the UK to play one game.
It depends on each game. Sometimes it's like 5 pence, sometimes 1 pence and 2 pence and stuff.
Yeah, in the US it's 25 cents or 50 cents or $1, but these games are 25 cents. So you play one game with one life or whatever, 3 lives, whatever you get with that one coin, and you play to the very end to get the maximum score, or you go for speed. For me, it's points. So all my games are arcade games. Those are all my records.
Aha. And is that a easy thing to do?
It was easy for me because like I said, I love video games. So playing them was always fun for me. I never took it as a job. There are records where people played, 40, 50 hours straight. Like these games I played probably in 1 hour tops. And they were relatively easy because I was able to, I guess, find a way to, I guess, crack the code. Like I saw like what the AI did patterns, and my brain was able to just capitalize on that. I guess I could see it.
Do you own your own arcade games, or do you have to go to an actual arcade to break these records?
Oh, for these, I had to go to the actual arcade, and there was a referee watching this happen live. I don't own any arcades. I wish I did. That would be actually a cool thing to own. But when I broke these in the States, I went to an actual arcade, and there was a referee that was watching.
And do you talk about these arcade games and the records you've broken in your podcast at all?
I mention it sometimes because sometimes new things come up in Japan because, like you have PS5 and things like that. I just, when I talk about video games and if it involves my records, I mention them a little bit, but I just do it in terms of, to decipher the game, to see how to play it or how to explain it, because I have like, I don't know how many hours. My mom yelled at me for playing so many hours.
Well, in the podcast, how long does it take you to prepare for it and record it and the whole process?
What my job, my real job is I'm an English teacher. So throughout the day, I'm constantly with newspapers and looking on the internet when I'm in breaks, trying to figure out what the topic is, or unless I went through like some experience, then that's what the topic is. But if I don't have a topic, I literally try to find, news that is not mainstream so I could, voice that. And then it probably takes me 1 or 2 hours to get the actual topic in hand. The actual recording is very straightforward. It literally takes me maybe 20 to 30 minutes tops. If at that, it depends on the takes. And then the editing and all that is 20 minutes. So let's say a good solid 3 hours probably in preparation and finale and things like that.
And how long is the podcast in duration?
Now, like I found the sweet spot where I was able to find it. It's now 5 to 7 minutes, even less sometimes. It's very short. But originally it started like very long, 35 to 45 minutes. But I found that the less I speak, like I just go direct to the topic and just boom, boom, boom. I found that to be more, how should I say, efficient in getting the news across and getting more listeners.
Do you think that sort of keeps the listener's attention?
Yes, definitely. Because I with people don't really have that much time sometimes to listen to the whole thing. So I said, well, let's cut it in half and let's see what happens. And after I did that, the listeners just grew. So, I'm going to keep doing that because I think that is the most efficient at this time.
And your future podcast episodes, have you got any of them planned coming up?
Yes, tomorrow actually. Well, I don't know when this show will be released, but
this will be this coming Thursday, the 5th of November.
5th of November. So I do not have a show for the 5th of November. I have the tomorrow's episode already recorded and everything, and it's ready to be launched. So just that one. I'm only one day ahead.
Okay. And where are all the places that your podcast is available for us to listen to?
Oh, it's available on all major podcasts. You could go to Apple Podcasts, Castbox, Google Podcast, Overcast, Spotify, Radio Public, TuneIn, Stitcher, and the list goes on and on. All major host that they have that.
Yeah. And on social media, are you on there for us to keep up with everything you're getting up to in Japan?
Yes, if you want to check out Living La Vida in Japan, please visit at www.facebook.com/Living La Vida in Japan.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ninja Eddie.
Oh, thank you so much, Tommy Griffin, for having me on the show. Shout out to all your listeners and all over the world. Thank you very much.